Hey guys, welcome to another episode of The Well. This podcast we have all women, no John, no Pete, just us four girls. Just gonna talk about some different topics that I think were important to just share from our experiences. So to the right of me, I have Miss Christina.
Hello.
And then in front of me, I have Maria.
Hello.
And Eunice.
Hi.
So this podcast is just going to be about just a woman's self-image or body image. We had a podcast earlier where Pete and John talked about body image or self-image. And they were getting into just things about how women and girls perceive themselves. And I thought it'd be a great idea for us girls to actually talk about it firsthand, where we can just share our experiences more in depth and more authentically. I think in that case, we're just going to start off by differentiating between self-image and body image. Does anyone have an idea of what either of the two are?
That's a great question because I came here asking, do you guys use self-image and body image interchangeably? Because I do. But it seems that we don't all agree on that.
Because, when I thought that too, but when I thought of self-image, a lot of what I thought self-image was about was just how we just portray ourselves. Basically, the definition is in the word itself, like how our image is by how we perceive our own image. And so I think that then affects our own perception of our body image and things like that. But I feel like people had different ideas on what self-image or body image is, and if anyone wants to share.
Yeah, I think for me specifically, like body image is part of self-image, but self-image encompasses a lot of other things too. I think for me, it encompasses like my career. I don't know. I feel like it goes beyond just body. It goes to like how I'm feeling emotionally, how I'm feeling professionally, how I'm feeling relationally too. I think I don't use them interchangeably. I think to me, like, again, body is part of it, but it's not the entire thing.
That makes sense.
So then would you think that self-image is more on an emotional and mental sort of level, where body image is more like, I guess, tangible, where we can see it and things like that? Or
I feel like it's just more of a holistic view of it, because it's definitely all a part of the way we see ourselves and the way we respond to that. And the kind of things we think about ourselves that really guides the way we do things. But I personally thought self-image was a lot about worth and like who you are and how that makes you feel valued or not valued, things like that.
So I guess that would be a good transition into what do you place your self-worth in, or just like over the years, what has changed, especially since all of us here are Christians and we go to church and we're told all of these things that we're valued by God just the way we are and things like that. But then society, a lot of times, and culture tells us otherwise, things like that. So if anyone personally would just share just in their life how self-image or body image and things like that have been influenced by culture, parents, things like that.
I think thinking about my past, growing up in a Korean American church, well, specifically like a first-gen church, I think it played a lot with how I don't know about you guys, but every time I went to church or I haven't seen some people for a long time, the first thing that they mention is either, oh, you've lost weight or you've gained weight. What happened? No, hi, how are you? How's life? It's straight to, you've gained weight.
Right.
Or
They just
you
notice
lost
like the very like physical things about
and then
you.
in high school, I had a lot of acne, you know, like hormones were raging everywhere and it was just not pretty. And of course, they go, 왜 이렇게 여드름 많아? Or translation, like, why do you have so much acne on your face? It's like, thanks for noticing. I didn't know, you know? So it was always with even just small words like that, it really gets you down. And then you reconsider yourself going, is this acne really making me that ugly for everyone to notice all the time? And that's the first thing that they want to say about me. And so, and then the thing about my parents, like, I don't think, like, specifically with my dad, I've always felt very beautiful around him because he's always said I'm beautiful, and he's always been affirmative on that. My mom too, but she's always made that distinction between my sister and I, whereas we're very, very different from each other. So if you take one look, my sister is the very typical glamorous, like really, really thin, and she enjoys putting makeup on and dressing herself up and stuff like that. And she's a very beautiful girl. So my mom made a very funny distinction when we were younger in high school. She'd be like, oh, okay, Millie, you go the sexy route, the glamorous route, and Christina, you go the cute egg yolk route because that's what you're good at. I was like, oh, that's my little box. I got to stay in that lane. And so I think with that, I just ran with that. So yeah, I don't know. I guess that's kind of my upbringing. I don't think I answered your question at all.
Oh, no, it's okay. Yeah, I think one of my questions were just like, then did you place a lot of your self-worth in what other people said?
Oh, yeah.
But then how did that change? When do you think that changed for you? Especially since now you're married to a pastor and things like that. So
dun dun dun. It's supposed to be perfect, right?
Yeah.
But in all
supposedly.
No, in all honesty, it's sometimes something I still struggle with and have to remind myself. Even with Pete around, and I know he sees me as most beautiful, and he's always been one who tells me not to wear the makeup, not to go out of my way to go unnatural of who I am. Even like getting a perm is like, why? You know, like your hair that God gave you is perfectly beautiful to me. But even with all of that, there's still sometimes such deep-rooted insecurities that just come out of nowhere sometimes and go enrages out and go, where did that come from? Even though I have a husband who's faithful and who's loving and is always encouraging me how beautiful I am, that I don't really need to change in those ways. It's still, I think society just places it on you, and there's a deep root that I'm still trying to figure out where that core is. And I think for me, the answer really is how I authentically and genuinely, wholeheartedly believe that Jesus sees me as most beautiful and perfect in his eyes, right? And
regardless of wearing makeup or things like that.
And everything of what I do, how I do it, who I am in society, all of that, I think, is really believing continuously, and it's a fight sometimes of just hearing that truth and believing in that truth, because sometimes the world tells you otherwise, or I'm, I don't work in big companies, or I'm not doing big career things. I work at a preschool, and I'm mostly a stay-at-home mom. Like it's not that fancy, but I guess it's just one of those things where, like I really have to sit and go, man, how much do I really believe in what Christ says to me versus how much the world tells me what I am worth? And so it is a battle. It's not as bad as when I was younger or not married and had bad relationships, but it's not. I'm not gonna sit here and say, oh, I'm perfectly happy. I'm perfectly satisfied in everything that I am. So it's an honest truth.
Yeah, I think for me personally, when I was little, for people who did know me, they know that I was pretty chubby as a kid. And so a lot of the things I did, the things I wore, like I basically didn't participate in many activities or things like that just because I just felt that I wasn't good enough or that I just didn't fit in. It just wasn't for me. And just like growing up hearing, you know, in the Korean church, things like that, like, wow, like, you know, just pretty big kid, things like that. Oh, 건강해 보여, like things like that.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it really does things to you. And I think over time, I've just learned to not really care about it, but in the sense that even though I can say like I don't care what other people think of me, of how I dress or what I wear, I still find myself not even caring about what God thinks, in the sense that a lot of me just doesn't really put much thought into it. And I think, that really shapes a lot of how I view myself or how I criticize myself and things like that. But yeah, if anyone has any advice, because I did take a survey recently of just any person who wanted to fill it out, and a lot of girls said that they felt insecure and things like that because society and just like parents and saying that they're too fat, or they want to be skinny and they just want to hide all of these imperfections. So if anyone has any advice, or just like, what are your takes on hiding or putting on makeup, things like that? Is makeup necessarily a bad thing? Is it does it accentuate your beauty, or is it just there to do for fun, things like that?
I don't know. I think like anything, intent is what's important. Like specifically for makeup, and I'm trying to think of it vaguely and just generally, if you are testing out a new eyeshadow because you think the color is really pretty, or it's a trendy color right now and you want to try it out, go for it. But if you are insecure about your eye shape, or you're insecure about I don't know, your eyebrows or your nose, and then you're putting on makeup more so to hide and shield, like the act in itself, it's almost like a punishment to yourself, because you doing it with that mindset is saying, I am not good enough, so let me do this to be better. So are you doing it with that mindset, or are you doing it because, hey, like cool new thing that I just want to try, or oh, I do feel prettier doing this. I think it's the different mindset behind it, because I think it'd be a false statement to say like I don't wear makeup, right? Like, I think all of us have days when we want to wear makeup. I generally don't wear makeup when I go to work, but on Sundays I enjoy putting on makeup and feeling like, oh, I'm getting ready and I'll go see people and different things like that. But during the week, mostly I'm feeling lazy in the morning too. But yeah, so mostly like I think intent, but then it's like, how do you decipher the intent?
Right.
And it's really just sitting with yourself and figuring that out. But a lot of the times we're go and we're just doing that. We're not really thinking about what our actions are showing, or what our actions are stemming from.
That's so true, because I always say that. I'm like, yeah, if you enjoy putting on makeup and it's fun for you, something that you like doing, then yeah, why not enjoy like the expression that comes from that?
Oh, yeah.
And I always say like, yeah, that's what I do. But the distinction gets really hard once, that becomes a habit, and then you kind of stop thinking about it. Then it's easy to find yourself one day, like, you're running late and you have to head out and you're like, but I'm meeting people today. Like, I'm not presentable. Like, once that thought kicks in, like, why am I less presentable? Am I any less of myself because I'm not putting on makeup? Even though it may make me look more awake, I don't know, or more sharper. Like, those things are true, but, it does something in our hearts that, makes us feel like, oh, I don't think I'm really ready to really feel confident and really take on today doing everything I am.
Yeah, that's so funny, because it reminds me of times when I don't even normally wear a lot, because one, just be told, I don't really know how to. But more than that, like I used to have like really no eyebrows, and I was born with I think, gorgeous eyebrows. If I was born a lot later, I think it would have been a hit now because, you know, the thick brows are in. But when I was growing up in high school, the really pencil line eyebrows were in. And if you didn't have that and you had the bushy eyebrows, you were called like nasty things. So I sat there plucking everything out to the point where I had nothing left, and my mom flipped out because she's like, those gorgeous eyebrows, what happened to that? And ever since then I had to draw them in constantly, right? But the point where sometimes like before, we used to go to Denny's on a Saturday morning, let's say, and people be like, okay, get in the car, let's go, it's just trip to Denny's. I'm like, oh, wait, I need to put my eyebrows on. And he's like, we're going to get breakfast at a diner. You don't need to put your eyebrows. Who's going to look at you? Well, and even that, I would have to stop and go, yeah, why do I care? I'm going with my family to eat, and they could care less about whether I have eyebrows or not. And yet it would still make me stall and open my drawer to just at least pencil in a little bit, to feel a little bit decent to go out. But there are times where he wouldn't even let me. He's like, just go because you're beautiful. You're fine. You don't have to look at no one's looking at your eyebrows. But it's, you know, it's still weird. But anyways, just reminds me of that.
So a lot of just like, as you said, like Pete being there, giving you like words of affirmation, telling you that you don't really need it, things like that. It's very just countercultural, I think, these days, because I feel like today, like we don't really, or we do, but then we still like feel that burden and expectation to look a certain way and to be a certain way and things like that. So how would you then sort of drown that out? Because it's one thing to, yes, believe that, God loves you and things like that. And a lot of the people who did fill out the survey, they did say that, they know all of this, that they believe all of this, and they've been told this from time to time, but it's still hard to really just like take that to heart, I guess, because they still feel like this expectation and burden. And I think these days we try to find people to give us that sort of affirmation and acceptance and things like that. But do you guys have anything to say to our younger girls out there who feel like they need to look a certain way and like, have a like flat stomach or be really skinny, be beautiful with their clothes and things like that? Like, what would you say to our younger ones out there? Because I feel like these days we've sort of lost a lot of that, a lot of just like love, I guess.
So I think it's interesting that you mentioned that, like, with Pete being there to like give her that voice of, hey, like, you are still beautiful, like it doesn't matter. I think it's interesting that you mentioned that affirmation, like to be hopeful, which, is true, because you want someone to say those words of like truth. But at the same time, I think I have a bit of a different take on it, because I am someone who, like, my love language is still primarily words of affirmation. And I thought like, oh, this is good because these are all the things that, I have trouble believing about myself. But when someone like tells it to me, then, I'll finally believe it. Then I realized as much as you are encouraged by those words, you're just as vulnerable to like the strength of those words. So when you don't have them or it's not enough, then like, how do you feel? Or like, when it is there, is it really helpful for someone to keep telling you, oh, you're beautiful, you're perfect, like you're great? Like, or does that make you question yourself even more? And is that, is that really helpful truth, or is there like a limit to what it can be? And so for me, there was a time where I felt like I was just so absorbed in that space of craving like attention for like reasons that I didn't even know why, just in that period of time. And so something I did to really change that was on my Instagram, I disabled all my comments. Because it was, people asked me why, and I was like, well, it's not like I hate, like, it's not like I'm scared of getting bad comments.
Right.
But it's like,
criticism.
even the positive things, I realize it just not healthy for me to have it in my head, to constantly be surrounded by like, oh, people affirming me. Like, even those things could hurt me in the end if I am building my like hopes upon that. And I'm saying like, yes, this is why, like, I'm beautiful.
Right.
Whatever. Yeah.
Definitely
Absolutely
talked
true.
about, just like me and you definitely had a conversation about like how big of an impact social media has on a lot of that stuff, and the changes that you've made through using your social media and things like that. So I guess that's a good way to just talk about how big social media has got. Because I think a lot of us come from different sort of like generations and cultures of like not having social media.
Christina, that's you and me.
And
Looked at us.
and then Facebook became a thing when I was in like 3rd grade. So
that's true.
Yeah, just how big it's gotten, and how much of our girls especially, I think, would just post a lot of these like really nice pictures of themselves, just like even with the stories and stuff like that, where they repost where, say, on birthdays someone reposts someone like their own birthday, like, oh, hey, happy birthday, and they repost it, and like that sort of like shows how you feel, like your own self-worth in that, and like how you feel so like accepted by that and things like that. So if we just want to talk about like, what was it like not having
Growing up with no
social
social media.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I can only imagine.
I think for me, Facebook started when I was in middle school, but I didn't get one until I was in high school, I think, like maybe freshman year or so. And then Instagram was only available for iPhones when I was a freshman or a sophomore. Sophomore year, second semester, spring semester is when it opened up to Androids. And I had an Android.
In high school?
No, this is in college.
Okay.
So there was a big gap between Facebook and Instagram.
Right.
Yeah. So then when Instagram kind of came about, oh, this also makes me feel old.
Really?
Just kind of like recounting when first Instagram came out. I remember being like, oh, that's so much work. Like, you gotta upload a photo and have like copy to explain the photo. Whereas like Facebook, you just, and I don't know, Christina, if you remember, it used to be where it had your name. So it was like Maria, and then you kind of fill in the update with is hungry.
Right.
So
I think so. I think
it was stuff like that. Whereas like Instagram started being about photos. And I think recently a group of my friends and I went through our Instagram feed and went all the way back of times when like you used to get 4 likes. And 4 was good because you got 4 followers. It was where you had like the most selective people on your Instagram.
Right.
You only followed and were followed by your closest friends.
Right.
Because you're kind of giving them an update of what I'm doing today. And then, I mean, it's no longer the case, right?
Right.
Get as many likes and followers as possible.
It's crazy. Like I look at some of our high schoolers right now and they're getting like 300 likes and things like that. And those are normal numbers because people just like photos. I remember when Instagram, I used to not like everyone's photo. Like I would only like it when I truly, really liked it.
Right.
Not as a thumb habit right now. Like scroll through, Christina posts something I like.
What, you don't like all mine?
I do. Thumb habit, you know? Whereas now you're not really taking in the photo and you're like, I truly like this. I enjoy it and I give it a thumbs up. It's habit. You're on my feed. I'm going to like your stuff and I count on your like back.
True. You almost feel guilty. But actually, I cut out all social media, so I can't really comment anymore.
You don't have Instagram anymore?
I have it.
You just
there.
don't use it?
I just choose not to because I've noticed myself a couple of years ago just using it so often that I missed out on what it was happening in front of me. And this is prime
Just to
time.
like document your children, or just like even just
it was
looking-
mostly children. Once you have kids, it's all about your children.
Right.
And then so I realized, I was like, I'm not even paying attention to my child doing what I'm trying to film and not seeing it, but seeing it through that screen. And it occurred to me, wait, I'm just gonna shut it off and enjoy what my child is doing. Because sometimes I even caught myself going, oh, do it again, and then get my phone out. But it's not as authentic anymore.
Right.
It's not as real. But I wanted to share it, right? But I think a year now, sometimes I randomly go on, but I realize it's the same stories. I didn't miss much for the past 6 months. Like literally.
Everyone's doing the same thing.
Same thing. Oh, kids a little bit older. Oh, you know, but it's usually the same theme and idea. And then I recognize, oh, maybe I don't need it. It's because I think I first gave it up like 2 years ago, Lent or something like that. And then went back on and then went off and then but now I'm kind of mostly off, I think, because for me, it was just, I'm not spending enough time just watching my own kids and taking in their presence right now. I do record still a lot, but I send it directly to my family group, my family chats, because they actually really want to see, their grandchildren, and grandparents and stuff like that. But social media is hard. I feel for you guys, the young girls who have to deal with social media bombarding their everyday lives.
Right, because social media has become so large that literally through just like a couple of clicks that they would see people like across the world, and then they would just feel sort of just not good enough, or they just start to degrade themselves in the sense that this person is doing all these things in other countries and like they're traveling and wow, they look so pretty and things like that. And I'm just here, in my bed, they just like start to make themselves less than what they actually are. And so I think a lot of our girls find a lot of anxiety and just no self-worth, I guess, or just very little in themselves. And it's just really hard to see that, I think.
Because everyone you see online seems to be doing a certain way. And if you're being honest with yourself and you're like laying down in bed going through your feed and you're like, man, everyone has it good and they look good, then it's like, oh, what am I doing? And like, I feel like it's not just the amount of people that are out there that feed into this mentality, but it's also with technology advancing, like there's so many more things available to craft that perfect image of yourself. Yeah. Like there are hundreds of apps that you edit your pictures, you like change the way you look.
People actually
literally
like FaceTune themselves and like change the way their like eyes or like how big they are and things like that. It's really crazy.
Isn't it so ironic? I mean, self-image and its like word in itself has the word self, but everything relating to self-image is a comparison game against someone else.
Yeah.
So it's never against self. It's more about with someone else. And I think with social media, it's easier to compare because you have it in front of you and it's always there for you to go back to and look at. So like if someone posts a photo, you can always go back to that. Whereas I feel like maybe back then, back in the day when there wasn't social media, the comparison game was just like when we're getting together and you tell me what you did and I just at that moment I compare and then I walk away, right? You maybe show me photos, like flip phone days, there are probably no photos. So now you can visibly compare yourself at any given time, constantly.
Yeah.
It's tiring.
And I feel like a lot of our like self-image, like not only is it social media, but there's like on top of that, it's just like the like day and age that we live in, plus like how we grow up and what our parents say, especially. I think that is a really big influence on how we just sort of like deem ourselves and how like our self-worth and things like that, and what we strive to be, in part like specifically on how we look with our bodies and things like that. But just I guess for me personally, like with my parents and things like that, growing up, it wasn't easy in the sense that, my mom was a very thin person. And so when I was very little and when I was big like that, just to see her and just have her like just nonchalantly just like saying like, oh, like don't eat too much, just like save some for later, things like that. Like those little comments really stick with you. And I think especially with the people around me, who are very near and dear to me, like family has a really big impact on how they then sort of like feel like they should look. And I think you, Christina, since you have Kara as your as a 4-year-old, how would you then sort of bring her up and sort of just have her self-worth?
Loaded question. Oh, I just tell her she's beautiful every day. I really do. I don't know. I think my biggest prayer for her and my boys too, because from what I hear, guys have image issues too.
Right.
But particularly for Kara, because I'm a girl and I know the struggles of being a girl in society in this world and what the world tells you. I really do pray for her identity and security and worth completely found in Christ. That's really my biggest prayer for her. Because I feel like once she understands who Christ is and who God is to her, then I'm hoping and praying that will carry her through her adolescent, teenage, like up and down years until she really figures herself out. Right now, she proclaims a lot more than my boys ever did. That, and I mean, you guys heard it in the sermon probably, that Kara still keeps saying, you know, God is my real daddy and he's perfect. And he made me beautiful. And she proclaims those things. And as she says it, in my heart, I go, amen. And may God, will you bless those words for the rest of her life, that those words never leave her. Every single day, those are the words that she will live by, that God is her daddy and he made her absolutely beautiful. And with me and Pete, myself, we tell her every single day that she's beautiful and that we love her and that God made her beautiful. And nothing else. And one time as a joke, like, you know, I was looking at, going back to eyebrows, my session with eyebrows. I was like, oh, when we grow up a little bit, maybe I'll just trim a little bit there. And literally Pete smacked my hand and is like, don't you dare touch your eyebrows. Don't even mention tweezing or changing her eyebrows to her. I was like, what? It'll look nice. No, they're perfect as they are. And he was so dead serious that I myself, without realizing, pour that, the worldly words to her without even me really realizing it. For me, it's like, oh, just trim it a little bit here, make it clean up a little bit. But even that is, whose standard is that?
And I think these days, like, because a lot of our youth generation, they are like, either like first or second generation, so their parents are still pretty traditional, and so the comments that they throw at us, they're just very subtle, yet they make a big impact. But then how should we then sort of like are we in any place to sort of like tell our parents like, hey, like you shouldn't do that or things like that? Because even now, just like with my mom and like sometimes like with the comments that she throws about either weight or just like how much we eat, things like that, to me and my sister, like a lot of us, we just tend to just like take it in and then just like hold it in and just ignore it. But it's still really hard to. So are any of us like, or have any of us sort of just like told our parents like no, and like have a conversation with their parents, like because I feel like they don't really understand the impact that their words have, and especially since their culture that they are brought up to believe like this is beautiful, this is the standard of beauty, and so if you're not this, then you're not really beautiful, and so you should work towards that. But have any of us sort of like had any experiences with our parents just saying like, hey, like can you like chill sort of thing, like?
Oh yeah, I challenge my mom every time it happens. So I think when I was younger, like I was vulnerable to that. I was just like, oh, these are the words she's telling me, and if it hurts, it hurts, and I just take it in, and I'm like, oh yeah, maybe I'm not like this enough or that enough. But now that I've gotten older and I've also, really understood that my identity comes from Christ, like it's like that confidence about me, though I'm not perfectly pleased with, every little detail about the way I look or the way I am, like that confidence to be like, you know what, like your words like cannot touch me because I know I'm precious. I know that like these things do not change who I am. So whenever like comments come up where she kind of like, even if it's jokingly, I'm like, sometimes I have to be serious, and I'm like, Mom, like, is this really what you want to tell your daughter?
Oh, wow.
I'm just straight up like, is this really what you want me to like think about myself and go into the world and like, you know, be this way? And I was like, no, like I am okay with the way I am because, you know, this is the way God created me to be. And I've come to terms with that. Finally. It's like I've finally been able to come to terms with that and really embrace who I am in that. And I was like, I mean, you could think whatever, but for you to think that that's going to make an impact on me to, you know, change and to be a certain way, I was like, I'm sorry, like that's not happening anymore, because it's like, yeah, I can't believe those things about myself anymore. I can't let those words get to me in that same way. And so I have to put up a strong like challenge to that and be like, because if I don't, I think it gets me vulnerable all over again. Because I'm just as susceptible to those words I fell for like in the past, just as I am now. And so purposefully, I like challenge her to think about it. And I'm like, yeah, Mom, like maybe this is not the best way. Like, why can't you be happy that like, you know, I really don't find my value in these things? And she's like, oh, well, but like, it's still good to be like this or that. I'm like, yeah, it is. It's great. I'm not saying that's bad. I'm just saying those aren't necessary things to, you know, add to that kind of worth, that kind of beauty. So it's a hard concept to, I guess, discuss with our parents, especially because I think being Korean, that's ingrained in their culture too.
Yeah.
It's like so deep in their culture, not even just like a conscious thing.
The whole face value thing.
Yeah.
I'm having a hard time with the word beautiful. Christina, I think that's the part that I love the most. So from what you shared was that, you know, when Kara says things, it's like, he made me beautiful. Because if I start saying like, I don't know, I'm thinking more if I thought to myself, I am beautiful, I am so fickle. So the I and the I am so beautiful is going to change, right? Like my emotion behind it and things like that. So it's almost like I can't rely on myself to make that statement. But if I say he made me beautiful, I can't question God.
Amen.
That's just a fact. That's just a statement. So I think, like, you know, I don't have kids, but when I do have a daughter, or if I do have a daughter, like reminding her that she is beautifully made by God, not perfect as in like you've got no flaws, compared to what other people think is beautiful, because beauty is subjective by country, by time, by like all these different things, but you are just beautiful fact, like, and you're made beautifully. Like, you may have longer arms than legs, but your long arms are beautiful. It doesn't mean that they're not long,
Right.
you know, but what's wrong with long arms? Yeah, what's wrong with long arms? Don't tell me that right now. There's nothing wrong with that. That's the thing. I think we start thinking things are not beautiful when we, like, what's wrong with that?
That's an excellent point.
Like, you know, we've got arms. That's what's important. The same thing with like eyebrows or with nose. I mean, the main thing of a nose, it's supposed to be able to help you smell things, help you breathe.
Wow. Straight facts.
Like, if it's that, it's beautiful.
Yes. For sure.
Like, who says a pointy nose is more pretty than a flatter nose?
Exactly.
Society, timeline, region, like, it's so subjective by different periods of time and periods or like regions, I think that can maybe help serve as a reminder that the beauty that the world calls beautiful has always changed.
Right.
It's not permanent.
Yeah, and
right?
I think that's a very important thing to understand because the world is constantly changing, like these different standards start to show up and things like that. And so a lot of girls especially like feel like they have to constantly change, but it's like what like it's going to continue to change. So are you going to are you basically saying that you're going to continue to like make yourself different like with every single trend or with every single thing, and so I think we've like come to a culture where it's just like we're just going to constantly just like do what, like keep up with the generation or like the culture and like continue to do that kind of stuff. So how can we then sort of like change that in the sense like as you said, like instead of saying like you are beautiful and things like that, like it's more important to say like he made you beautiful and things like that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So,
just having this conversation right now is giving me a new perspective for myself. Like I don't have it all together. Like like even as I am talking about this, as you guys share, I'm like, oh yeah, wait, why don't I really, really believe that?
Yeah.
It's like, it was such a breath of fresh air. Like, yeah, we are beautiful because, we are, like, God created us. He literally crafted, like, our very being. And it's like Maria said, like, he gave us nose so we can, can smell. Like, if we have a nose that we can smell with, then it's like, thank you, Jesus. I have a nose.
That's right.
Like,
that's what it's there for.
Beautiful nose, Maria.
Thank you. You too, Christina. God made that nose beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, it's funny because, that's totally true. I'm going to have to say, yeah, Kara, you are beautiful because God made you beautiful. And I think she knows that as an essence, but it's that grammar of really installing in that he makes me beautiful. But in honesty, we also tell Kara when she's not that beautiful, like when she's sinning, like when we can point out when she's really utterly selfish and being mean and just not willing to share, then we go, Kara, you are always beautiful because God made you beautiful. But right now, this sin is not beautiful.
Yeah.
And she understands that and says, my sin is yucky, And I think that's important as well.
100% agree. Because why are we supposed to be refined to beauty being something physical? Right?
Absolutely.
So I say that too, like to Victor.
Hi, Victor.
I say that to him. Right now you're being really ugly. Like it's coming off really ugly to me. And then I know when I was being really ugly. Like I don't think it's supposed to be just a physical attribute. I think it encompasses a lot more than that.
right.
But we're just focusing and honing in that beauty. And it's almost like, when you're fighting, or like when I was younger and I used to be arguing with my brother, there were just statements that he would say that there was nothing that I could do as a comeback because that's his opinion or that's what he just said.
Yeah.
Like, right? But what is going to be, like, what can you come back to when you say, well, God made me, like, God gave me this? Or if I, like if Eunice, if you are like, I really don't like my elbows, and I'm like, but God gave you those elbows. Like,
Right.
my ashy elbows.
Yeah. But if I said to you, like, so like, are you questioning God, the elbows that God gave you? Like, are you questioning what he created to be you? What do you respond to that? You can't, right? So I think it's more so like shifting the conversation that way. it's like so much self, but what does self-image, like, why should we even be thinking about self-image? Where does the value of self-image come in? Like,
Right.
there's nothing. Like, I shouldn't be looking inwardly. I should be looking at God at all times.
God image.
Yeah. So it's
should
not
change the
made in
culture to
God's-
God image.
We're made
really
in God's
is.
image.
Yeah, it really is. Like,
It's
if
true.
I'm doing self-image, I'm looking at myself. I'm thinking myself. I'm thinking I, me, myself, and all those things. But truly, if I'm thinking God's image, then I've got nothing else to say.
So then I guess this might be difficult, but like, it's hard for a lot of the girls these days to, you know, really believe that, in the sense that, let's just be honest, like when we're teens and when we're just like younger, like we never really put much thought into like God. We never put much thought into religion and believing these things. Like we go to church and sometimes we go on like the spiritual high, things like that. But a lot of times we find ourselves just like teetering, you know, back and forth, and just like really being just like indifferent to everything, and just like living a life where the gospel hasn't really broken through. And so what would you then sort of like say to these kinds of girls in particular? Because no matter how much you can tell them, like, or is it a matter of just continuing to tell them like God made you this way, and there's no other way that I can like sort of like help you, or just like things like that? It's just like God made you this way? Or is there something like, is there a different approach to these kinds of girls who are still really just like not really there with their faith and with their relationship with God?
Something I've been thinking as we were talking tonight was that
I actually lost
sorry,
her thought.
I forgot what I was thinking.
Keep that in. Well.
Good question. Anyone want to pick up?
Pause. Just pause. I think our brains, more so now than ever, are trained to keep going and going and going and thinking and thinking and thinking. And it's like, just pause. Let the noise quiet and be still, and look at yourself. Like, if you want, in a mirror, or just not even through a mirror, but with your own eyes. Look at your hands, look at your feet, look at your elbows, your knees,
Your eyebrows.
Touch your eyebrows, you know. And it's like, why are you going to tell your hand or your eyebrows or your nose or your mouth or your cheek, you're not pretty, you're not beautiful? Like, it's sad. Just think exactly of what you're saying to yourself, and just pause and let those thoughts drown out. And I don't know how to say it. Like, I don't know.
Just like bask and sort of like
Be still. Yeah.
I think that's really important, because these days, like, we're so busy. Like, even though we're not doing anything, we're constantly like, we won't stop thinking about like the next step or the thing ahead, and like just thinking about ourselves and things like that. But I think a lot of us just sort of have this like disillusioned idea of what rest is. Rest for us these days is just laying on our bed, going on social media and things like that. And
That's even more work, right?
Yeah, honestly.
Back in the day, when it was rest, it was literally rest.
Yeah, and so I
Nothing
think
to do.
these days we've sort of just allowed ourselves to be like okay with that, and just like, just not really knowing what rest really is, to be still, to be calm and things like that. So it's interesting that you brought that up, because I think a lot of us just don't really know like what that really means, or have like a really just disfigured idea of what that is.
So I collected my thoughts again.
Okay, welcome back.
Before I lose it again. I was just thinking about, why we have these insecurities in the first place. Like, whether physical or not, but if we are to like focus in on the physical, like, I feel like the reason why we have these insecurities are because, we want to be loved. And we think of these things as ways that will add to our value for people to, or I don't know, anything really, just to be appreciated and just to be loved for who you are. That's funny because it's for who you are, but not really for who you are is what you're making it out to be. But that means to say, if we weren't insecure about those things, it's like, we, like, our value of who we are should be secured, and our love, like being loved for who we are, like, shouldn't be something that changes. And I think something that really made that real in my heart and in my understanding as I've, struggled through this was that, God's love is unchanging. Like, it does not falter. Like, I had so much trouble with understanding the words like unconditional love. I was like, yeah, it sounds good, but like, what does it actually look like? But to really experience the kind of love that I realized that, even when I am ugly, whether physically or, I don't know, just
like in your character.
Yeah, in my character. If the truth is that God's love for me is not dependent on how beautiful I am at that moment in character or like physically, but if it's even when I am ugly and I am running away from him and all these things, but he still says, I love you, and calls me his child, then like that love does not change. It never goes away. That value is there and so secure. And I think that really pounded it into my heart that, man, if that doesn't ever change, then like, who I am and where I feel the most loved, where I feel the most accepted, like nothing can touch that. Like in the fundamental, like, need of love. I'm like, man, God, you're so good in that way where, we are blessed to be able to find that in God. Like, he provides that for us. And I think seeing or realizing that, just helps so much to be able to have something to fight with when I am battling these thoughts and like having these struggles. Like, I know where to go back to. I know the truth to pull out. But I think especially for those that, are struggling with this and, have not really, had a chance to, like experience that love from God. It's like, that really has to, like, that experience needs to take root. Like, it needs to take a hold of you first. Like, yes, like hearing these truths help, but like until that day that like, that really makes sense to you, that really has meaning in your heart, like, it's gonna be a battle, but of course it helps that like we're able to talk about these things and like
I think that's a good point. So back to my pausing statement, I figured out what you need to do after. Okay. Okay. Well, Eunice brought it up to light, and it's when you're thinking something is beautiful or not, and you're trying to figure out your image, your worth, and all those things, and you said, if I was more this or if I was less this, God would love me more. Right? That's essentially what you're saying. And that's not true. Right? Like you said, we have these insecurities or want these improvements because we want to be loved more, or we want to be acknowledged more. We want to be seen more. But if you said, if I did this, I am seen more by God, I am acknowledged more by God, there is no statement that there is anything that I can do for him to love me more, right? And like Eunice said, like I think as a Christian, you are equipped with that as your weapon in battle
Right.
against this as you're going through life and society. But if you don't have that, the unrest. So it's like, what's the best answer to point someone to be able to see this? It's helping them and equipping them with this knowledge, right? But then it goes into an even broader topic. I think it's so interesting because even beautiful is different to everyone, and even the word self-image was different to all of us as we began the conversation. And the more you think about it, the more you ponder on it, you see the irony behind it. You see how what you consider your self-image in is different what others see. So when the other person's looking at you, they're not looking at the same thing that you're looking at because their perspective is different. So there isn't a way to be that to everyone. But it doesn't matter to be that to everyone. What matters is to know that God sees you as you, and you are as good as you can be because he made you that way.
And I think that's very important. And this might deviate the conversation a little bit, but it's I feel like it still has relation to the fact that especially when we get into relationships and things like that, whether it's friendships or just like intimate romantic relationships, it's important to have that knowledge and be firm in that before you engage in this, like whatever you're about to, because I feel like if we don't like truly or like firmly believe in that, like I feel like the anxieties and the insecurities only heighten when you engage in that kind of stuff, because then you start to think of, since you're in like a relationship with this person, like now you sort of have to like, now you have their opinions who truly like do matter to you, even more so than like your friendships and things like that. Like I'm the only single one here, so like, I guess
it's true. It's
I guess
true.
my question would be like, just like having that belief and things like that, like how did that sort of like navigate your relationship and things like that, or just like even before having that belief?
I tell young girls all the time, don't date anyone until you really are secure in who God is first, who you are in God. Because I went into a relationship with Pete not being really secure. Like, so when we tell guys and girls, wait to really know, to date, to really know who you are before you start dating and all that kind of stuff. But in actuality, God kind of, I think, guinea pigged us for this ministry in many ways, because we were not ready to be dating. We should not have been dating. We both came up, like I just came out of a really messy relationship, and it was bad, and it was a very unhealthy relationship. It was very abusive verbally, and I felt, I had to work my way through the relationship to feel beautiful and try to get affirmation and stuff like that. So I came in with Pete very, very fragile in everything that he said or do, and I pushed all his buttons so bad, like to compare, like you're just gonna be like the other guys, all that kind of stuff, and it was probably really difficult for him. So God bless him for enduring through all of it. But yeah, it has to be something that you're secured in first before you really want to date anyone, because then a lot of that goes into you. And going back to what Eunice said, it's so crazy that what we're talking about is all these things that I have been dealing with too, for a long time, and presently it's coming up. And sometimes when you deal with something, it feels like you've dealt with it, but it creeps out of nowhere. And so it's some like sin or something that keeps coming up, because it's something that God wants to continuously teach and mold us. And so like the affirmation thing, I'm a huge words of affirmation person too. So, and Pete knows that, and he knows that's my drug. And so I would be like, it's good, right? And he's like, because he knows sometimes he lavishes it, but sometimes he holds it back depending on where I am in my state of health in that way. Because I yearn for, it's a drug that I need it. And if I don't get it, it's like, why are you not saying that? Why are you not saying that this is good? You know, it's like, even for the littlest things. Yeah, but it's crazy that especially in a relationship, the insecurities can flare up even more when you think you have somebody who really loves you, but even in that, it can play out sometimes in an ugly way. What you, Maria?
Yeah, I think knowing what your tendencies and insecurities are always helpful in any relationship. Because then you are aware of it, and then the other person is aware of it, and it becomes accountability. What was the original question? Something about relationship.
Yeah.
Like,
How well do you need to be secure, I guess?
I guess it was just more
How
just
important
like,
is it?
like in your own personal experience, like how did that sort of impact like and influence your relationships and things like that?
I think easy answer is it's super important. Because if you're secure in God and you know God loves you and that you are great because God loves, like, you know, and then you have your, you know, your sins and things like that, then it's easier going into a relationship. Is it the case most of the time? Probably not. I'd say a lot of the times it's not. And it's because when we're unaware, we're truly unaware going into it. Like we're almost oblivious and in denial. I think I'm aware. I know this part. So I'm good to start dating. Is there ever a right time to start dating? It's easier as you get going because you start figuring out your stuff. And it's just that much harder if two people are trying to figure out what their tendencies are by poking at each other. Be like, did this do it? Did this do it? For me, I think it was, I don't know. My relationship with Victor wasn't easy, but it wasn't difficult because I think the moment Victor and I started dating, Victor was very secure in who he was. So I'd go like wild, like if we're going in a chart and he's that stable line and I'm going up and down and up and down, he's there.
That's like
yeah, catching me when I'm falling, pulling me up, and like things like that. So had I been stable with him, it would have been easier. And I'm sure if we were both unstable,
more harder.
But I mean, I think him not as a male and him not as like Victor, but him as a Christian is what helped ground me. He showed me how to love as a Christian. He, like, you know, as a follower of Christ, and what that looked like, how to love not just in a relationship but with others. So it was more of he showed me. He just showed me. He just lived it. I saw it. I experienced it. I loved it, and I lived it, and I became it. Right? So that was my experience. So was it easy for me? Yeah, because he was secure.
It would have been difficult with a male counterpart.
I'm pretty sure it was difficult for him.
Oh, I drove Pete crazy. He could tell you I drove him crazy. But he's still around 10 years. Oh, strong.
Bring me back socks from Korea, please.
No, he is literally the stable ground. Yeah, I would have been going up and down, but he's constant. And he challenges me every single day. To this day, intensely, passionately challenges me to live the best way possible. He doesn't let anything go. Like even the small things where I'd be like, whatever. He's like, no, honey, it could be better. We can be better, more godly, more like Christ. I'm like, oh, I just want to be ugly sometimes. Like, no, we can't be ugly, you know? But I wouldn't be here if he wasn't the tangible expression of Jesus in my life, for sure.
Yeah. So, and then it's all relational, right? Not just with a male counterpart, but with friends as well. Like having friends that
really support you and encourage you. Yeah.
It's so important. And that can speak honestly, that speak openly. And the thing is, like, even in a relationship with friends, if I'm not willing to listen, no matter how much they speak, I will not hear.
Yeah.
Right. So then it's that, like, I'm not even ready to make friends. It's not just like a romantic relationship, but it's also friends as well.
True.
And goes into small group, goes into church community, it goes in at work. I think it seeps into so many ways, right? And then like the main relationship, our relationship with God, same thing. He's always speaking, we're just not listening. So and then the thing is, like, everything is so relational. The nearer we draw to him, the more he reveals, and the more he reveals, the more he awakens as well. For me to be able to do, and then for me to be able to see, and then that again washes away my insecurities, washes away my sinful tendencies. They're still there, but like a little some. And then I'm rejuvenated, feeling loved, energized by him and by that. And then as that goes away, right, then I can form a good relationship. So I think it plays into every relationship. And the more you are aware of your insecurities, but then the best way to become aware of those is by drawing closer to God. That's the best light.
You can answer if you feel comfortable, but you don't have to.
Yeah, you're in the dating relationship.
I know, y'all are married. I do want to make like a disclaimer though, like, yeah, just because you are in a like loving relationship does not mean these struggles go away.
Yeah.
Like, it is such a fight, I think. But it's like, I'm so thankful that, you know, basically I grew up hearing Pete and Christina telling me, like, don't date until you like really find yourself secure in God's love for you. Honestly, I was like, I don't even know what that means. What does that even mean?
What does that mean?
But I was like,
For
you
next
know
time.
what?
Thanks for being so specific.
But I was like, you know what? No, yeah, maybe I really need God's love more than anything. And I started being like, yeah, that's what I really want before I, you know, get into a relationship, because I thought about it, and like all my past, like, you know, relationships with guys have been very insecure because, you know, I would have based that to give me all the affirmation I needed to build up like who I am and all those things. And I was like, yeah, that is not, man, that is so short of, you know, what God desires for us and our relationships. And I realized if like whoever you're in a relationship with is someone that's able to point you back to Christ, I feel like to be secure, to desire you to be secure in God's love as well. I think that is like the best it could be, I think, even though it's not perfect, because
It could get ugly too.
oh yeah, there's days where I will be like, I am feeling needy right now. I'm like, I am needy, and I know what that feels like. But then to have someone be like, okay, then you need Jesus, go, you don't need me.
I know.
Like, that is,
sure.
you know, that helps me too.
Yeah.
And like, I think that's, I don't know, that's my experience with seeing that. And I was like, yeah, it's so necessary. So like, thankful for Christina and Pete drilling that in my head. And then, you know, thankful to God that, you know, I'm able to experience that.
Right.
I'm able to try to live it out. I'm like, yeah.
Notice how we are nowhere near where we started.
Yeah. We talk a lot.
Yeah.
I think if anyone has anything else they want to say, I think we can just end with just like, you know, this is ARCHE, this is our community. And I think it's really important that we build a community where we just, you know, we are the broken, we are the poor, we are all just a mess in our own different ways. But I think just going back to like our original topic of just like our self-image and things like that, or like yeah, just as a community, do you have anything to say, especially whether it especially to our male, to our boys, to our men out there, how they can, best be like sensitive or just like understanding of like girls and stuff like that. Cause I think it's important, like, you know what I mean? Like just to have like any advice for our men to like chill with their words or like how they,
well, I think it goes both ways.
Yeah, with the females too, but like especially.
Yeah, I mean, to the boys, I'd say we know it's hard being a boy too. We know you have your own issues and insecurities and things that you are comparing yourself to. Like, do I work out enough? Am I tall enough? Am I like, big enough? Am I this enough? And all those things. And girls go through that too. And just like words that girls say can be daggers, words that guys say can be daggers to girls. But sometimes words that girls say can lift up guys, words that guys say can lift up girls. So just being more mindful of that. Why put out that negative energy out there? Why not be a community that just lifts one another up, not tears away from one another? And lifting up doesn't mean all good words. It means sometimes saying the tough words too.
For sure.
So just being that, I think you think of self-image more closely to females. But as we went through today, I mean, self-image is not even truly self. It's comparing who you are against the person who society, your friends, or social media have pinned you against, comparing you against. So just like looking towards, what does your God image look like? And then are you helping those around like see what their God image is? So I think to both girls and guys, what impact will you make? How will you be part of someone's story too, right? Just like sometimes we have crazy stories of like, oh, one time this guy said this to me. Like, do you want to be that guy? Or for girls too, like sometimes we say things that we don't necessarily think are things that tug at their strings because we're not used to. Like, we don't talk about biceps. We don't.
Yeah, we downplay it ourselves, but then like to other people, it's like, it's a big thing.
Like, I'm like, I don't go and be like, oh, Christina, check out my biceps or look at your biceps. But then sometimes we comment at guys' biceps.
That's true.
It's just different things. So for them, it's like, who cares about your nose? So I want to make a comment about your nose. But it's just different things like that. So just being mindful, I think, is very important. Yeah, I don't know how else to wrap all that up.
Yeah. Anyone else got anything to say?
I think another thing we can say is the beauty of ARCHE is that there are people who love the Lord, older, younger, of all ages. So if you do struggle with insecurities or your images or what really is what it's supposed to be like, really feeling secured in God, reach out to someone. Maybe you want to talk to someone older who's been through it. Maybe you want to talk to a friend who's going through it. Find accountability. I think the best way to tackle it is to be vulnerable and to face it rather than hide it. If you think something is going on in your own heart. So if you do, reach out to someone. I know all of us here are more than willing to hear you out.
Kidding. Yeah, it's really important that I guess you guys just, whoever I'm speaking to, whoever is listening to our 20 faithful viewers, just to be there for one another. I think to be a loving community, to love upon one another, I think is very important. And you may not think that it's there, but then don't let your own judgment cloud all of that. So
I mean, that's what I desire, like conversations like this, having all women's podcasts and things like that. Like that would stir like, you know, the hearts of other girls, other women, and be like, yeah, I want this. I want to be in community with other females and really, have accountability and have companionship to living life as a girl and getting through or walking through these challenges in life in light of who God is. And so,
Guess that's it. Thank you for listening. We hope to see you on the next one, and good luck, Chris, on trying to name this podcast episode. But yeah,
We love you, ARCHE.
bye.
Well, I have one. I know what you should name it. God made you beautiful. What's
God's
your
image.
rebuttal?
Oh.
Yeah. Like, what are you going to say to that?
Oh.
Okay.
All right, back to bye, ARCHE. Bye.